AITA for my reaction when my girlfriend said her ex would take care of her. After that night, I understood that some decisions are not made in an instant, but rather form slowly, like a crack that starts out invisible and ends up breaking everything. The weeks prior to what happened were not easy. Nothing dramatic happened all at once. There was no huge conflict that changed everything in a single day. It was rather a constant accumulation of small disagreements, uncomfortable comments, and feelings that neither of us knew how to handle entirely well. It all started when Brooke told me about a get-together with her old college friends. She mentioned it to me casually as something normal. According to her, several friends wanted to reconnect after years of not seeing each other, share experiences, and remember old times. There was nothing strange about that. I have never been a jealous person. I always believe that trust is the foundation of any healthy relationship. Therefore, when she told me she would go alone, I had no problem. I had work early the next day, so I stayed home. That night we exchanged some messages. Nothing out of the ordinary. She told me everything was going well, that there were people she had not seen in years, and that she was glad she went. It made me happy to see her in good spirits. The problem was not that night, it was the next day. During breakfast, almost as if it were an unimportant detail, she mentioned that at the get-together she had run into her college ex-boyfriend. I knew she had been in a significant relationship before meeting me, but we never talked much about the topic. I asked her how the encounter had been. She calmly replied that they had talked for a while, caught up, and were on good terms. That phrase stuck with me. I did not overreact. I did not raise my voice or make a scene. I just told her that even though I trusted her, it did not make me feel entirely comfortable knowing she had spent time talking with someone she had such a significant relationship with. I did not expect what came next. Brooke got upset. She told me I was being toxic, that she could not believe something so normal made me uncomfortable. According to her, the fact that someone had been her partner did not mean they stopped being an important person in her life. I tried to explain that it was not about control or distrust, but about boundaries. I told her that from my point of view, maintaining closeness with an ex-partner could complicate things, especially when an emotional history still existed. She disagreed. She explained that her relationship with him had not ended badly. There was no cheating, no loud fights, no resentment. Their lives simply took different paths. He was busy with work and studies. She also had her own projects, and over time they stopped aligning. I do not love him anymore, she told me. He is just a friend. That phrase marked the beginning of everything. I did not respond immediately. I thought my words through carefully before speaking. I told her I understood that not all relationships end badly, but that did not necessarily make it healthy to maintain a close friendship with someone who used to be a partner. I asked her something simple. How would you feel if I started talking frequently with an ex-girlfriend? Her answer was quick. I would not mind. I trust you. That is where a dynamic began that repeated itself for weeks. Every time I expressed discomfort, she minimized it. Every time I tried to explain my boundaries, she interpreted it as an attempt to control her. Little by little, I started to feel like anything I said could be used against me. The conversations were not explosive, but they were tense. We did not yell, but we did not understand each other either. It was like speaking two different languages. A couple of weeks later, Brooke told me there would be another gathering. This time it was not a quiet meetup. It was a bigger party organized by the same group. There would be music, drinks, and a lot of people. When she mentioned it, I felt immediate discomfort, not because of the party itself, but because of who I knew would be there. I asked her directly if her ex would also go. She did not deny it. She told me he probably would, like many others. Her tone was completely normal, as if there was no reason to worry. I calmly told her that I did not feel comfortable with the idea. It was not an accusation, it was a concern. I explained that after everything we had discussed, it was hard for me to ignore the situation. She sighed, clearly annoyed. She said she was tired of having to justify herself for everything, that she was not going to stop living her life just to calm my insecurities. That word again, insecurities. I tried to stay calm. I told her I did not want to forbid her from anything, that I had no right to do so, but I also told her I needed to feel respected. I explained that this was not a small thing for me, that it was not a whim, that it gave me anxiety. The conversation was long. We went around in circles over the same arguments again and again. Neither of us yielded completely. Finally, I told her something clearly. I am not asking you not to go. but I do ask you to keep your distance from him." There was an awkward silence. Brooke looked at me and after a few seconds said I was exaggerating, but that she did not want to keep arguing. Then she added something that reassured me in that moment. She promised me she would not talk to her ex during the party. She said she was going for her friends, not for him, that she understood how I felt and did not want to create more conflict between us. I wanted to believe her. The night of the party arrived. Brooke got ready more carefully than usual. I did not say anything, but I noticed it. She wore a simple dress, light makeup, and her hair down. Before leaving, she gave me a quick kiss and said, "Do not worry, everything is going to be fine." She took an Uber to the party. I stayed home. I had pending work, so I decided to focus on that. I thought keeping my mind busy would be better than sitting around imagining scenarios. Upon arriving, just as she promised, she texted me a short message. "I am here. All good." I replied, wishing her a good time. Over the following hours, we kept in constant contact. They were not long conversations, just occasional texts. Everything was calm. "More people have arrived. We are good." Sometimes she would send a picture of the place, a bit blurry, nothing special. That reassured me, not because I needed to monitor her, but because I felt she was taking my feelings into consideration. At 10 o'clock that night, she was still texting me, although the messages started getting shorter. I figured the music was louder or she was busier. I did not think much of it, but near midnight something changed. Near midnight, I noticed that more time than usual had passed without her texting me. It was not alarming on its own, but it was enough for me to notice. I checked my phone a couple of times waiting for a message, but nothing came. I remembered we had agreed she would return around 12:30 in the morning. I thought maybe she was already saying goodbye or waiting for a ride. I tried not to give it too much thought. I turned off the computer and sat on the couch. I left the phone on the table, but I kept looking at it every few minutes. Half an hour went by, then another. At 1 o'clock in the morning, the silence started feeling different. It was no longer just a lack of messages. It was an uncomfortable feeling, hard to explain. I texted her something simple. "Everything okay?" There was no answer. I tried to convince myself that nothing was wrong. Maybe the place was packed. Maybe she did not hear her phone. Maybe she was simply distracted. At 1:30, I checked again. Nothing. By 2 o'clock in the morning, the unease could no longer be ignored. It was not just the time. It was the fact that Brooke never vanished like that without letting me know, especially knowing I was awake waiting for her. I called her, and it went straight to voicemail. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. I repeated to myself that there could be a simple explanation, that there was no point in imagining the worst, but something did not add up. At 3 o'clock in the morning, a message finally came through. I read it once, then again, and one more time, as if I needed to make sure I was understanding it right. "It is very late. We have had too much to drink. I am not coming back right now. I will stay at my ex's house. He will take care of me." I felt an immediate pit in my stomach. It was not just surprise. It was a mix of disbelief, anger, and a very clear feeling that a line had been definitively crossed. Everything we had discussed for weeks flashed through my mind in a matter of seconds. I did not think too much before replying. "Tell me, where are you? I am coming to pick you up. Do not stay there." It was not an order. It was a direct, almost desperate plea. The reply arrived quickly. "Please, do not start. He is my friend. He is letting me use his bed, and he is sleeping on the couch. Do not be insecure." I read that message with a strange calmness, as if my body had already reacted before my mind did. I tried to reason one last time. I wrote back saying that this was not right, that it was not an acceptable situation while being in a relationship, that for me, staying over at an ex's house after a party and having had too much to drink crossed a very clear boundary. I was honest. I told her that to me, it broke my trust in a major way. Her response was immediate and much colder. "I hate that you accuse me like this. You are nobody to tell me what to do. He is a good person. My head hurts. I am going to sleep. We will talk tomorrow." That was the last message. I kept staring at the screen for several minutes. There were no more words to add. The apartment was completely silent, but inside my head everything was still making noise. I did not text her again, not because I had nothing to say, but because I understood it no longer mattered. She had already made a decision and did not seem to care how it affected me. I went to bed, but I could not sleep. Every phrase kept repeating in my mind. "Do not be insecure. You are nobody to tell me what to do. He is my friend. It was not just what she had done. It was how she had justified it, how she had ignored everything we had talked about, how she had reduced my boundaries to a flaw. At some point, without realizing it, I stopped trying to understand and began to accept. At that hour, in the dark, I knew something had ended, not impulsively, but definitively. I got up early before the alarm went off. I had barely slept, but I did not feel tired. I felt empty, as if a part of me had already made a decision during the night. I showered, got dressed, and got ready to leave. The apartment was exactly the same as the night before. Her side of the bed untouched. No sign that she had returned. I did not leave a note. I did not feel it was necessary. During the drive to work, I did not think about arguments or reproaches. I thought about practical things, about what was coming next. Upon arriving, I asked to speak with my manager. It was not an impulsive decision. I had been feeling stagnant for weeks, and what happened only accelerated something that was already in progress. I told him I needed a change, that I wanted to transfer to another branch. He was surprised. He asked if something had happened. I answered professionally, without going into details. I told him I needed a change of scenery and that I was willing to take on new responsibilities. He checked his computer and told me there was an opening in another city, but that the process usually took time. Then he asked me a direct question. When could you start? I did not hesitate. Tomorrow. He looked at me with surprise. It was not a usual answer. I explained that I was ready. After a few minutes, he made a couple of calls. When he returned, he confirmed that the transfer was possible, that I could sign the paperwork that same day and report to the new branch the following day. I thanked him. I went back to my desk and worked like any other day. Without talking too much, without explaining anything, as if everything was in order. But deep down I already knew my life had changed. I left the office around 5 o'clock in the afternoon. All day I had managed to keep my mind busy, but I knew the hardest part had not yet passed. When I got to the apartment, the door was closed. Everything looked normal from the outside, as if nothing had happened, but that feeling lasted only a few seconds. Upon entering, I saw her in the kitchen. Brooke was preparing something to eat, although it looked more like an attempt to stay busy than a real intention to cook. She had her hair tied up messily and was wearing comfortable clothes. Her appearance was not that of someone who had a good day. She turned around when she heard the door. For a moment, her expression changed. She seemed relieved to see me. She walked toward me quickly. We have to talk, she said almost breathlessly. Please, listen to me. It is not what you think. Nothing happened. Everything got out of hand. I did not think clearly. I did not answer. I left my keys on the table without looking at her and walked straight to the bedroom. She followed me. She kept talking, making excuses, repeating that nothing had happened, that I was overreacting, that she loved me, that she would never hurt me. I opened the closet and took out a suitcase. That was when she stopped. What are you doing? She asked, this time with a lower voice. I did not answer. I pulled out another suitcase and placed it on the bed. She stepped fully into the room, more slowly, as if she did not want to believe what she was seeing. Are you serious? She asked. Are you going to leave like this without even listening to me? I did not answer. I started folding my clothes calmly, without rushing, but without hesitation. Every movement was mechanical, precise, as if I had already decided it long before that moment. Suddenly, she stepped closer and grabbed my arm. Please, her voice began to break. It was a mistake. I was not thinking. I had been drinking. I did not know how to get back safely. I just needed a place to stay. I remained silent. Nothing happened with him, she insisted. I swear to you. He slept on the couch. I was in the bed. There was nothing. I did not react. Not because I was not listening to her, but because it did not change anything anymore. She knelt in front of me. She started crying for real. They were not held back tears. They were deep, desperate sobs. I cannot lose you, she said. You are the best thing that has ever happened to me. Please, do not do this. I kept folding clothes. My silence seemed to affect her more than any argument. Are you not going to say anything? She asked through tears. Are you not even going to try? I did not answer. I zipped up one of the suitcases. Then she changed. She stood up abruptly and walked toward the apartment door. She stood in front of it, blocking the exit. When I tried to pass with one of the suitcases, she hugged me tightly. You cannot leave like this, she said. We have to fix this. I am confused. Yes, But that does not mean I do not love you. I tried to pull away gently. Please, she insisted. Do not throw everything away over a mistake. There was a brief silence, and then she said something that completely changed the tone of the situation. And the rent? She asked with a broken voice. What are we going to do about the rent for the apartment? It was the first time I spoke since I had arrived. I looked at her directly without anger, without raising my voice. Your ex takes care of you. Tell him to help you with that too. She stood motionless as if she did not expect that answer. Her hands slowly loosened. The expression on her face changed. It was no longer just sadness, it was disbelief. I gently stepped away, opened the door, and walked out with my suitcases. She did not try to stop me again. She did not yell. She did not say anything else. She just stood there in the middle of the apartment in silence. I closed the door behind me. As I walked down the stairs, I felt neither relief nor satisfaction, nor guilt, just a clear sensation of closing something that no longer made sense to continue. The move to the other city was faster than I expected. That very night, I was already on my way. I did not take many things, only the essentials. The company had told me it would take a few days to organize my permanent housing, but a coworker who had been transferred earlier offered to help. He let me stay at his apartment. It was a small place, but tidy. He lent me the couch and a blanket. We did not talk much. He just asked if everything was okay. I told him yes. It was not entirely true, but it was enough. That night, I slept better than I imagined. The next morning, I had several messages on my phone. They were not from Brooke. They were from mutual friends. Some asked what had happened. Others did not ask. They accused. They said I had left without explanation, that I had left her alone, that I had overreacted. One even mentioned that what I did was a form of emotional manipulation. There was a group chat where we were all in. I went in, read it. Brooke had written quite a bit, not everything, but enough. She presented herself as confused, remorseful, abandoned. She claimed I had left without listening to her, that I had made an impulsive decision, that I had left her with responsibilities she could not handle on her own, but she omitted something important. She never mentioned that she had stayed at her ex's house. She never repeated the words she had said to me that early morning. The story was incomplete and carefully curated. For a few minutes I thought about not replying, leaving the group, and moving on with my life, but I realized something. If I did not say anything, that version would be the only one. I did not write a long text. I did not argue. I did not explain. I simply took screenshots of our conversation from the moment she told me she was staying at her ex's house up to the message where she called me insecure and said I was nobody to tell her what to do. I sent them to the group without comments, without additional context, and left the chat. I did not block anyone. I did not say anything else. I just closed that door. That afternoon, while returning to my coworker's apartment, I saw I had a message from Brooke. It said I had ruined her life, that now everyone was judging her, that nobody understood her, that I had been cruel. I read the message only once. I did not reply. There was nothing left to say. That night, sitting on the couch, I thought about everything that had happened, about the arguments, the words, about how for weeks I was made to feel that my boundaries were insecurities, that my discomfort was a problem, that my silence was weakness, and I understood something important. I had not lost a relationship. I had lost an illusion, something that was no longer real. The next morning, I woke up with a different feeling. It was not happiness. It was not complete relief, but it was clarity. For the first time in a long time, I knew I would not have to justify how I felt, and that was enough to start over. Several months have passed since that night. The move to another city ended up being more than just a job transfer. At first, everything was strange, new streets, different routines, unfamiliar faces. But that feeling of disorientation lasted less than I expected. Little by little, life began to fall into place. I found a small apartment near the office. Nothing luxurious, but enough. It had the essentials: silence, space, and above all, peace. That peace that had ceased to exist for weeks before I left. Work helped too. Learning new processes, adapting to a different team, having clear goals. All of that forced me to focus on the present. There was not much room to get stuck in what had happened. Even so, in the beginning, memories surfaced not as dramatic scenes, but as isolated moments, conversations, details, phrases. During the first few days, I checked my phone more times than I care to admit. Not because I was waiting for a specific message, but out of habit. But with time, that disappeared too. Brooke texted me a couple more times. They were not long messages. The first one arrived a few days after that last one. It said we needed to talk, that things could not end like this, that there was a lot to clear up. I did not respond. The second one was different, shorter. And I am sorry. I did not respond either, not out of pride, but because there was no point in reopening a conversation that, deep down, had already ended long before that night. Some mutual friends stopped talking to me. Others, over time, came back. I made no effort to convince anyone. I did not explain my side of the story more than once. I figured that whoever really wanted to understand would do so, and whoever did not, it did not matter anyway. Interestingly, the controversy in the group faded away faster than I imagined. As usually happens, everyone's attention shifted to other topics, other stories, other conflicts. Everyone else's life went on, and so did mine. There was a moment, weeks later, when I thought about it all from a greater distance, without anger, without the need to be right, just with clarity. And I reached a simple conclusion. The problem was never just that night. That night merely made visible something that had been breaking since before. It was not just her decisions, nor mine. It was the way we stopped listening to each other, the way we started seeing ourselves as adversaries instead of a couple, where one asked for understanding and the other heard control, where one expressed boundaries and the other saw insecurity. And at that point, it was only a matter of time. Today, when I remember everything, I do not feel rage nor nostalgia. I feel distance, as if I were remembering something that happened to someone else. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if we had handled things differently, if we had known how to communicate better. But I do not dwell on that thought for long because I also realize something important. A relationship is not sustained just by intention. It is sustained by respect, by consistency, and by the ability to understand the other without needing to invalidate them. If that is missing, sooner or later everything breaks. Even without a huge betrayal, even without an exact moment, it just wears out. Recently, without looking for it, I saw a picture of Brooke on social media. She was smiling. She seemed to be doing well, and I was genuinely glad, because despite everything, I never wanted things to go badly for her. I just realized it was not meant to be with me. I closed the app without overthinking it and went on with my day. That was perhaps the clearest sign that everything had been left behind. Not the fact of not remembering, but the fact that it no longer hurt, and that for the first time in a long time, everything was in its place. Not perfect, but at peace. Comment: I really appreciate you taking the time to watch this story with an open heart. One thing that always stays with me is the power of respecting our own boundaries. It's completely okay to feel uncomfortable when something doesn't sit right with you. I believe we all deserve to be in relationships where we feel safe and truly valued. Choosing your peace sometimes means making difficult decisions, and that's perfectly fine. Healing often begins the moment we stop excusing what hurts us. Please be gentle with yourself as you learn to speak up for what you need. Remember that setting clear boundaries is an act of self-respect, not selfishness. I hope this encourages you to reflect on what you truly deserve in your own life. I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comments. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.